the 23rd number of Psalms. I believe that we all know this passage of Scripture. And if you don't mind, I would ask that you would join in and read aloud with me. I'll be reading from the King James Version. Are we ready? Yes. Let us read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You may be seated. As I look at the 23rd number of Psalms, I'd like to take this thought. If it had not been for the Lord on my side. If it had not been for the Lord on my side. When I look at this scripture, I believe that David wrote from a reflective standpoint. For all the things that he said, he would have to acknowledge this after he has gone through something. A lot of us, while we're going through our situations, it seems like God is nowhere to be found. And we truly don't understand who God is until we look back and we realize that God has been there the whole time. And so I believe that David wrote this psalm looking back over all that God has brought him through. And so as he wrote this from a reflective standpoint, I would like to preach this from a reflective standpoint. In other words, I want to do Psalms 23 in reverse. Starting at verse 6 and ending at verse 1. And it says, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In order to make a profound statement such as forever, you have to have known something about it. He says, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That tells me that at one time he was there and stepped outside of the house to realize that it wasn't what he thought it was. I remember when I grew up in my mother's house, all I had was a few things to do. Wake up in the morning, eat, go to school, play, do my homework, go back to sleep. That was a cycle. I figured I had this down packed. I had it down packed so much, it was time for me to go out on my own. Because all I had to do was wake up, eat, go to school, play, go to sleep every now and then, do my chores. I got this figured out that there's nothing more I can learn at home. But what a lot of us don't realize is what's happening behind the scenes. And so when I got around 17, I felt grown. No one could tell me anything, and I moved out on my own because I got this whole pattern figured out. But I quickly realized that when I moved out the house that the lights didn't stay on by themselves. I quickly realized that food did not magically appear in the refrigerator and the cupboard. I didn't understand that while I was at home, there were some things happening outside of my peripheral. And there it is with God. A lot of us take things for granted because we don't see what's happening behind the scenes. And so David stepped outside of the will of God and found out quickly that he had all his needs met while he was at the house. And so I want to tell the young people who are so quick to get out the house, it's not what you think it is. Because while you're at home, all of your needs are met. But as soon as you step outside the house, you now have to fend for yourself. And so David realized this, said, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, because I understand there's nothing like the Lord's house. And many of you are here today because you understand there's nothing like the Lord's house. So I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And he was able to find his way back to the Lord's house because goodness and mercy followed him. Goodness and mercy was following him. He had God before him, but when he stepped outside the house, you need to realize that when you step outside of God's will, God doesn't follow you. As much as he loves you, he's not going to follow you when you step outside of his will. But what he will do is when you step out, he will send goodness and mercy with you. So when you come back to yourself, there is goodness and mercy behind you to put you back to the Lord's house. And so this goodness and mercy followed him. And when I think about it, I think about when I was in high school, you have a lot of people who think they're big and bad, but you realize they're really not. But the reason why they big and bad because they got their boys who got their back. But had it not been for their boys, they wouldn't be who they say they are. They wouldn't stand up like they stand up. But when you know you got somebody who got your back, that's a little swagger in your walk. And that's how it was with David. When he realized that goodness and mercy had his back. When he went through trials and tribulations, fear could have overcame him, but he looked over this shoulder and he saw goodness. And he looked over the other shoulder and he saw mercy. Realized that when Satan stands before me, I got my boys who got my back. So when you got goodness and mercy following you, there's some things you can do that you thought that you couldn't do because goodness and mercy has your back. But David every now and then fell outside the will of God, which also makes sense why goodness and mercy has your back. Because whether you are a saint or a sinner, you're going to fall. Now, I know what you hear on TV, on radio sometimes, that when you have God in your life, nothing ever goes wrong, but I dare to say that though you're saved, there's still some things you got to work on. That though you're saved, you can still have some rainy days and you can still fall short. And so the thing is, when you fall, it's not that you fail, but it's what you fail on. Because if goodness and mercy got your back, when you fall on the goodness and you fall on the mercy. And when you fall on the grace and the mercy, you have the ability to get back up again. Not because you've been so good, but because goodness and mercy has your back. David realizes, I have goodness and mercy behind me. And because of goodness and mercy, he realized that his cup was overflowing. When I think about the overflowing cup, once again, I was very active as a child, and I would always, I don't know why I tried to do this, but I thought I can beat the system. And the system was to take the cup and put up under a faucet of running water. And my goal was to, as the water was filling the cup, was once it reached the brim, I would start drinking the water as fast as I could to try to get the water down before the faucet filled the cup back up again. But I quickly realized that my stomach would begin to get full, but the water kept running. And I tell you that when you have God in your life, when it seems like you can't take no more, God keeps giving more blessings in your cup. And so God filled his cup with new mercies, but he wasn't finished with the old mercies. And so he has this overflowing cup. And so I realized that I can still get what I need by leaving my cup under the faucet and letting the water still overflow. But what a lot of us do is when we take our cup, it reaches its desired level and we take it from the faucet. Not realize that as soon as you take the cup, you cut off your blessings. And a lot of us